What's up, everyone, and welcome to Madden 17, and we are going to be starting a series today as the game just came out a couple hours ago as of the time of this recording. We are going to be starting up our franchise for this year, and I plan on sticking with it a little bit longer than I had the last couple years just because things are a little bit better. I actually plan on playing the game a lot more than I did at this time last year when I got frustrated with it. So let's get into it. You will see on the screen right now the team I did select. I said the other day that I was not sure what team I was going to be using for my franchise, but I did decide to go with the San Diego Chargers. It pretty much came down to Chargers, 49ers, and the other team was Los Angeles, but I figured Los Angeles would be a pretty popular one to do, and Sneaky P is one of the biggest Madden YouTubers for franchise, and he picked the San Francisco 49ers, which kind of swayed my decision. So here's the coach settings, and I know I usually don't like to say, I think that multiple people can do the same series and have it be really good, but I knew I was just not going to be able to put in the amount of time or effort into this series, so I figured I would go with a different team altogether. And the Chargers are an interesting pick for several reasons I'm going to get into later on in this episode, but here are the coaching settings or various other settings for this. I'm going to start out on 11-minute quarters. I'll probably increase that to 12 or 13 depending on how the game plays. It's really all about how each individual Madden plays out. So here are our injuries after the preseason was over, and it wasn't really too bad. Just our third down back Danny Wood had slot corner Brandon Flowers and Orlando Franklin, who was our starting left guard. And here is going to be a look at our overall roster. I signed a couple guys in free agency, and I cut a lot of the players that were on the roster because it is still the preseason roster. I used the roster that the game included, not the game included, but that the game prompted me to use when I booted it up. It said there's a new roster. I downloaded it, and that is the roster that I used for this, so that's what the ratings reflect. And unlike other series, I'm probably not going to restart this because I really don't have any reason to. There's not any custom draft classes. I don't really care all that much about the depth guys on the roster. Like, I have Joey Bosa and some of my other draft, like, pretty much it was mostly about having Bosa, even though he's not on the Chargers in real life, like, he hasn't signed his contract yet. He's on the roster in this, so we're going to go forward as if the Chargers do settle this whole thing with him. So we will see how that concludes in real life, but we're going to move forward as if he is going to be on our team. So let's move on to a couple things that I want to discuss now that you have seen our roster. After eliminating the 49ers, I came down to two teams. Basically, I was down to Los Angeles and San Diego. So San Diego presents the opportunity to rebuild because of age and need, and they're kind of rebuilding on the fly. They didn't make the playoffs last year, but they were in the playoffs twice before that, so there's a potential that we could make it at the bottom, but I'm really not thinking that's going to happen. This division is extremely competitive. The Chargers are the only team in the AFC West that I don't think is going to really challenge for a playoff spot in this year's NFL. And they have a lot of holes throughout the roster. The offensive line is kind of a mess. There's nobody very good on there. The Chargers used the first-round pick on Melvin Gordon last year, who's only rated a 76 in this game, and I think he has normal development. They're pretty solid at wide receiver. They have a couple guys, mostly Keenan Allen, and they signed Travis Benjamin to that big deal, but and they drafted Hunter Henry to eventually replace Antonio Gates. So on the offense, like the skill positions, I'm not super concerned, but the line is really bad. The defense, I think, needs almost a complete overhaul outside of cornerback and a couple of linebackers that I like a lot, and Joey Bosa. There's really not a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. Both of our safeties are really bad. Dwight Lowry, I think, is one of them, and he's under 80 overall, and the other guy is some dude I have never heard of who is, I think, like a 75 overall. He's pretty young, but I don't envision him being a long-term piece. At corner, we have a couple good corners. The best player on our roster is Jason Verrett. He's an 88 overall, so that's pretty good, and I'm going to have to look at what their ratings kind of entail for the top two corners, because they also signed Casey Hayward, who's someone I'm a big fan of in the offseason, in this last offseason. And the way I'm doing, I'm very glad that this year Madden added formation subs, because basically what I'm going to end up doing is putting Casey Hayward in the slot once Brandon Flowers comes back on all nickel plays, and he's going to be starting on the out. Basically like what the Jets are doing with Buster Screen, where he's going to be the starter on one side in their base defense, and then when they go to nickel, they're going to move him into the slot. That's basically what I'm going to end up doing with Casey Hayward if everything works out as planned. So Another note is, you may have noticed already, I will be starting out as the owner just so we can relocate to LA. Now the Chargers have an option to relocate before the end of the season. I'm going to proceed with the move to Los Angeles. Unfortunately, there's no way to share a stadium with the Rams. I thought that would have been a cool feature. I would have really liked to do that. But you have to relocate and build your own stadium completely. So I'm going to be using the owner of the Chargers currently until the relocation process is finished. And I simmed it out and it worked so that I can go from being the owner to the coach after the relocation process is over. And I'll probably be creating a new coach, so I'll update you guys on that whenever the relocation process is done, because I'm not going to be doing a video for every week of this series. Some of you remember my last year's series that I started in about, I don't remember exactly when, but it was in December or January, I believe, when I started my second series in last year's game where I played that one season with Washington. It will be basically like that, where I'm not going to be playing every single game of the season, and I'm going to be simming quite a bit. It's not a very common format for Madden franchises, and I'm sorry if you don't like it, but I want to move through the series as much as possible, and this is really going to be the third series on my channel once NBA comes out. It's going to be posted quite a bit here early on, but once NBA 2K17 comes out, this will end up being probably the third series on the channel. It might get uploaded a little bit less and not as frequently as the other two main series I'm going to be doing for MLB still and NBA. I don't know how that timeshare is exactly going to work out, but this will probably be the least prioritized just because Madden is the one I play out of those the least, or want to play out of those the least. And while I do enjoy playing the game, I want to move through it as quick as I do the other ones. So for this first season, it's going to really depend on how our team does. I don't expect this to be a playoff team, but if we're a playoff team, I'm probably going to lean more toward a 8 to 9 game season of playing and play a few games toward the end of the season. But really, if we're just terrible, not a good team, I'm probably going to stick somewhere in the 5, 6, 7 range, probably aiming more for 6 and simming most of the end of the season, like the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season, and just not playing and moving on to the next season. So I got all that out of the way. That is pretty much it for this introduction. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoy, and I will have week 1 out later today. And our first matchup is on the road against the Kansas City Chiefs. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, everyone. And stay tuned for more San Diego Chargers franchise, soon to be Los Angeles Chargers franchise, in Madden 17.